trees in bloom, the PR transmissions will assume they'll try to push drugs to keep us all dumbed down and hope that they will never see the truth around. Another promise, another scene, another package lie to keep us trapped in greed. Another green bells wrapped around our minds, an endless red tape to keep the truth confined. They will not force us. They will stop degrading us. They will not control us. We will be victorious.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. So tonight I have a very special guest. However, I do want to give a heads up that there is a trigger warning. We are going to be talking about some serious things, including SA and the unaliving of a child. To those who are not new here, YouTube is not a fan of using certain words. That's why I say unalive and SA, because they will take down my show if I don't essentially whitewash the reality of a situation. So unfortunately, as frustrating as it is, that is why I do it. But I am going to welcome this amazing gentleman who I met in Boston, Eric Carter-Landin, an incredible advocate and just an awesome person, very sweet and a nice guy, and did an incredible podcast. He's in Nuevo Mexico, which I love. So thanks so much for joining me tonight.
Hey, yeah, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Appreciate the nice introduction and thank you. Yeah.
Absolutely. So first, you were the keynote at the event in Boston. That's where I shared with you guys. I did the first book signing. It was a true crime podcast festival, and there were so many different kinds of representation there. I would say, like, there's podcasters, but then there's also people who have been affected personally by traumas in that regard, and then there's people who are just interested in true crime. But you were the keynote and you shared your story about your baby brother. And it's up to you how much detail you want to get into. But if you want to just start there and share a little bit about Jacob and what basically what transpired.
Yeah, thank you. It is a heavy story, so just I know you gave that trigger warning, but it is hard to hear sometimes, but I think it's important to talk about these issues. I feel like, child abuse and domestic violence and intimate partner violence and those kinds of things are very difficult for people to discuss. Um, I think that there is a tendency to want to protect your psyche as a human being and to want to protect your emotions from thinking about these kinds of things because they are scary. They open your eyes, I think, to the reality that it's not always the stranger that is the danger. It is often the person that you know very well. And I think that makes people uncomfortable. But I am a firm believer in what you ignore, you allow. And until we are willing to face these difficult conversations as a society, we can't expect them to change. We can't expect things to improve. You cannot ignore this problem away. So I always want to start by saying that because I think it's really important to level set why we're even talking about this. And I think that there's a lot of lessons that can be learned from my story, my mom's story, that could help people, from making choices that could lead you down the same path. Not to say that my mom was responsible for what happened, but I think that there is a lot of red flags and a lot of signs in the story that might help people who might be going down the path of a relationship that is abusive, and things that you might be able to see before you realize that it is abusive. So Jacob, he was only with us for 9 months. But we have really, really good memories of him. He was a daredevil. He was fearless. He had a huge personality. He laughed like Eddie Murphy, um, which I thought was amazing. And if you've never heard Eddie Murphy laugh, it's kind of like this. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So Jacob would laugh like,
Yeah.
um, I was raised in a Pentecostal home. My dad was an evangelist. He was preaching all around. He had moved my mom and I from New Mexico to Texas, and he would leave for weeks at a time to go preach. And oftentimes we would be left without food or money. And my mom was a single mom, basically. I mean, she was married to my dad, but he wasn't around. And, there were times where we had to depend on the kindness of strangers to eat. And we had neighbors, luckily, that somehow knew what was going on and would leave groceries on our doorstep. And without them, I don't think we would have eaten. But at the same time that all this is happening, I'm harassing my parents for a sibling, and I'm praying every night for a brother. And I'm telling my mom, like, oh, yeah, I had a dream last night that you were pregnant. And, just I was 5. So I didn't really understand what kind of pressure I was putting on my parents, in the middle of all of this. But my dreams came true. My mom got pregnant, and um, my dad, shortly after my brother was born, started having a connection with a woman. I don't believe it was a physical connection, but there was a connection there, and my mom, understandably, was upset. She'd been trying really hard to take care of me and my brother in spite of what my dad was or wasn't doing as a father. And to find out that he's talking to somebody else on the side just really was the end for her. So she packed us up and we moved to back to New Mexico so she could be closer to my family. And they could have, she could have a support system around her. She could work and know that her kids were going to be taken care of. So we came back. And shortly after that, my dad's best friend starts coming around. And he is not a stranger. He was not somebody that we did not know. He grew up with my mom. His dad was a pastor. We went to that church. We know this family. His sister married my mom's brother. Um, his aunt is my godmother. So this isn't a random person. This is somebody who's been in my family's lives for years. Somebody who appeared to be a very nice person. Somebody who appeared to be a good guy. And my mom, she wasn't necessarily looking for a relationship. She was just trying to get on her feet. And Stephen was pressuring her to date him, essentially. So he started love bombing us, which, if you don't know what that is, that's when a perpetrator of abuse showers their intended victim with affection, with attention, with gifts. They also escalate things quicker than you would expect in a real relationship. They will be quick to say things like they love you. They'll be quick to say things like they can't live without you, like you've changed their life, you've made everything better. So many lines are said. But he wasn't just love bombing my mom; he was love bombing me. He would give me candy for dinner and let me watch the Terminator movie. And I'm a 5-year-old kid. That is not a movie that a 5-year-old should be watching. Um, but I thought it was cool. We would listen to rock music really loud, and so I was enamored with this person. I thought he was awesome. He drove a sports car. He knew everything about my parents' situation. So none of that was accidental. None of that was by chance. All of that was planned, but we didn't know that. And in the 80s, you didn't know those things. You didn't talk about that stuff. That was private stuff that people dealt with on their own. It was not anybody else's business to talk about. So, he weaseled his way into my mom's life and was constantly trying to escalate things in the relationship. Let's move in together. Let's get married, this and that. It was nonstop. He would go and find places where they could move in together and take her to go see them. And, just it was constant, 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 constant. At the same time, Jacob starts to have injuries that are unexplainable. Um, Initially, Steven starts blaming me, saying that I am jealous of Jacob, that every time I see Jacob, I hit him or kick him or push him or pinch him. I don't remember any of that. I remember being jealous of his name, like thinking that he had a better name than me. And then my grandma told me that my name meant princely, and I was over it. I was like, cool, I'm good. That's a cool name. So, I'm sure that there probably was some sibling jealousy there, being an only child going to having a small brother, but I don't remember feeling that way towards him. I don't remember hurting him on purpose. I remember being really like, I don't know if inspired is the right word, but I wanted to be as fearless as he was, and I wasn't. I was a very fearful child. Um, he would do things like we had this baby swing and it was a wind up one. And every time it would go forward, he would grab the front legs of the swing. And when it would go back, he would throw the whole thing back. And one time it happened, he fell on the floor and he just laid there laughing. He thought it was hilarious. We pushed the swing against the wall so he couldn't do that again. But he just kept trying. So he would throw it back, hit the wall, throw it back, hit the wall. And then he would laugh because it was making noise. He thought it was hilarious. Um, he would take all of the drawers out of the kitchen cabinets. And, this was before baby proofing. There were no cabinet locks. There was no nothing. There was a baby gate. That's all we had. We had a baby gate. There were no corner protectors. There was no outlet covers. It was wild. You could just open a bottle of bleach. Like there was no child
Oh yeah.
protection. You could open pills with no like kids could just get into whatever. So, he was fearless and he liked to play Superman. He liked to be placed above your head until he didn't, until he started getting hurt. And then one day he has a skull fracture. And Steven tells my mom that he left me and Jacob alone, a 5-year-old and a 3-month-old alone, or a 6-month-old, so he could go take his kids to his ex-wife. Um, I don't remember that happening. That doesn't mean that he didn't do that. He claimed that I took Jacob out of his crib and dropped him. But the thing about it, there's a couple of things. First of all, who would leave a 5-year-old with an infant under any circumstances ever?
Yeah.
Who would think that that would be a great idea if that actually happened. I don't think it did, but let's pretend for the sake of argument that it did. Who in their right mind would think that was okay?
Yeah.
Nobody. Nobody. Um, so but the other part of it is that the crib itself had casters on it, and it was really tall. Like, it was over 5 feet tall.
Oh, wow.
So, in order for me to get him out of that crib, I would have had to probably take a chair from the kitchen, pushed it up against the crib. He was 20 pounds when he was born. I was
What?
not. Yes. No, I'm sorry, 10 pounds. 10 pounds when he was born. Not 20 pounds, 10 pounds. But he was probably 20 pounds by then,
Yeah.
or close to it. And I was very small. I don't see that I would have even had the strength to have lifted him up out of that crib.
Right.
But Stephen claims that I picked him up out of the crib and I dropped him on the floor, and that's how he fractured his skull. So my mom did not know what to believe. She wasn't sure what was going on. She sent me to be with my dad in California. So I changed schools. I started kindergarten in a new school, had a new teacher. I was living in a new city in a new state. Um, and my mom starts to really get concerned that Stephen is responsible for what's happening to Jacob. So she really starts to limit how much time he is alone with Jacob. And, you know, my grandmother at this point notices a change in Jacob's behavior. One day she tries to pick him up over her head to play Superman, and he starts screaming and crying and clawing at her hair and trying to jump out of her arms. And so my mom gets home. My grandma says, "What's going on? Why is Jacob acting like this? Something is wrong." So my mom confronts Stephen and asks him if he's hurting Jacob. Stephen says no. She says, "Well, why is he acting this way?" He said, "All I do is this." And he grabs Jacob and starts to pick him up. And Jacob is literally trying to jump out of his arms into my mom's arms, crying and screaming, scared like he's never been before. So my mom takes Jacob and says, "Don't you ever play with him like that ever again. And don't you ever hurt my son." He's like, "I promise I didn't. I promise I didn't. This, I don't know. Maybe I was playing too rough, whatever." She's like, "Okay, whatever." So by this point, she's like, he is not going to be alone with Jacob.
So
But Jacob
just to
still.
back up a little, did you when this was happening and you were noticing behavioral changes and some injuries and stuff, did you think maybe because he was this fearless little baby and always like rocking in his thing and everything, maybe he hit his head on the wall, maybe he was moving around and got a black and blue that way? Because if he's accusing you of going in the crib and taking him out, and you didn't do that, and it's not even feasible, was maybe there a sense of denial in the beginning that, well, maybe he just hurt himself because he's, a rowdy baby? Or did you think it was your mom's boyfriend from the get?
I didn't really understand what was happening, honestly. Like I was very confused by the whole situation. But I knew that the adults were telling me something was happening, and the adults were telling me that it was my fault. And there was one time where, my mom, my grandma, and Stephen and I were in my grandma's house, and Stephen's trying to get me to admit to hurting Jacob. And I'm kind of like wishy-washy about it. I don't know, I don't remember. And he grabs me by the shoulders really tightly, and he looks in my eyes and he says, "Don't you lie. Don't you dare lie. You know what happens to people who lie." And it's like hurting me. So I just say, "Okay, I did it." Like, fine, whatever. Um, and that's when they, sent me to California. So I really wasn't aware of exactly what was happening. Um, I just knew that I was in trouble and Jacob was hurt, and I didn't quite understand why I was being blamed for everything. I didn't understand it. But what ended up happening is on April 9th, 1987, Jacob's still recovering from his brain injury, his skull fracture that had to be drained and lanced. He had to wear a helmet. He was on medication for an ear infection that he had, but he was allergic to the medication, so he was just not feeling good. Um, and my grandmother wanted to go to church. She called my mom and said, "Hey, Jacob's not feeling good, but I really wanted to go to church tonight. What do I do?" My mom said, "Well, I get off in an hour and I'm supposed to go look at this place with Steven because we're thinking about moving into it. Um, I guess take him to Steven and I'll try to get off work early." So she goes to her boss and she's begging him to let her off early so she can go home. And he tells her, "No, it's too busy right now. You can't leave. You need to just finish your shift." She says, "Okay." And she just has a horrible feeling, but she tries to busy herself. And it wasn't even a full hour when Steven comes running into the grocery store where she's working, panicking, saying that Jacob is unresponsive. And at the same time, there's an ambulance driving by that has Jacob in it. And they rush him to the hospital. We live in a small town. It's called Socorro. It's about 75 miles south of Albuquerque. Jacob's injuries are so severe that the hospital can't deal with what is going on with him. So they have to life flight him to Albuquerque, 75 miles away, to the university. Actually, they first fly him to Presbyterian Hospital. They can't deal with it. So they fly him to the University of New Mexico Hospital. My mom and my grandma and grandpa and Steven get in a car and they drive the 75 miles to the University of New Mexico Hospital. And Jacob is in such bad shape that the physician had to sign off on him, on his surgery, emergency brain surgery. Luckily, my mom got to see him in Socorro before they life flighted him for a little bit, because he did not survive the surgery. He did not make it through it. He passed away in the early morning hours of April 10th, 1987. My mom got there, and the doctor met her along with a state police officer, met her and Steven. They started separating everybody immediately so they could question them. Um, my mom runs off crying, freaking out. She just loses it. Like what you would expect from
Sure.
a mom. Steven doesn't seem worried about her, doesn't seem worried about Jacob. He looks at the doctor and he says, "This isn't going to look good for me. This looks really bad for me. I can't believe this is happening to me." And the doctor thought it was so weird that he wrote it down and he told the police that he was concerned that this was a case of child abuse. Um, he also said that he could see on the CAT scan that Jacob suffered blunt force trauma to the head, top of the head, about the size of an open palm of a male adult hand. So, the whole way to Albuquerque, Steven is telling my mom, "I didn't do this. This was an accident. I promise you. I promise you this wasn't on purpose. He just fell off the couch," all this stuff. He tells the doctor the same thing. The doctor's like, "That's not how he died. That's not what happened." So then he changes his story again, and the doctor's like, "There's no way that's not what happened either." He changes his story depending on who he talks to, I think about 6 times. Um, he confesses twice eventually. We'll come back to that. He he's trying to convince my mom, that he's innocent, that this was all an accident, and he keeps telling her after, the funeral and everything that he wants to tell her everything. He wants to tell her the truth, but he wants to do it at Jacob's grave. She never went, luckily. I am convinced that he was planning on hurting her. I'm convinced of it. That was why he was trying to get her there. It's a remote area. Nobody would have seen anything. So I believe strongly that that's what he was trying to do. So then he says, I think it's around July of '87. My mom's not with him. You know, she's working. He's following her around. He's leaving her notes on her car. He's calling her at work. He's leaving notes at my grandma's house. He's just relentless, you know, begging for her to take him back. So around July, he comes up and he says, I'm going for a lie detector test at the state police office. Come with me. I'm going to prove to you that I'm innocent. I'm going to prove to you that I didn't do anything wrong. I'm going to pass this test. So she says, okay, we'll go with you. So we go. We're in the parking lot of the state police office for hours. I mean, it feels like forever. It's July, it's hot. And he comes strolling out, happy as can be. My mom asks, how did it go? He says, great, I passed. And we believed him because he walked out of the police office. Like he walked out of the station. So yeah, of course you passed. So for my mom, like that was okay. I can accept that this was a horrible accident. I can accept that what happened to my son was not on purpose. I can move on, you know. Um, then when they start seeing each other again, he says, "Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you that I signed up for health insurance and I said that you're married to me and you're covered under my insurance and so is Eric. So now we have to get married because I've committed insurance fraud." Um, so they get married and it is like a switch was flipped. The second they got married, he starts beating my mom up every day for whatever reason. It could be anything. You know, I looked at him the wrong way. I used the wrong knife to spread my mustard on my hamburger. My mom got her ass kicked. Um, you know, he would lock me in my room and I would just have to listen to her scream. I couldn't get out. I couldn't do anything. We were with him for about 5 years and it was complete hell. It was a nightmare. I used to sleep with a baseball bat, a kitchen knife, a bottle of Aquanet, and a lighter under my bed. I was like 8 years old because I didn't know. I didn't know if he was going to come in my room and hurt me. He didn't physically beat me, but he did abuse me. Um, and he told me that if I ever told anybody, that he would kill me, my mom, and nobody would ever find us. And I believed him. Um, he gave me every reason to believe him. So I didn't say anything. I didn't tell my mom. I didn't tell anybody what he was doing to me and how he was touching me.
Do you ever think about, like, was there a part of you, and I'm not, oh God, I'm so sorry. Did you ever think about, like, why did my mom go back to him? Like, even if he passed, and I'm not saying, like, this is not accusing or anything. I'm just asking, like, your thought process as a young boy. Did you ever wonder, like, why would she go back? Even if he did pass the lie detector test, like,
I mean, I think I know why. He had manipulated her and
oh,
convinced her. Gross. Sorry, that comment's gross.
oh God, what?
Somebody
Oh,
said their nipples were hard.
are you fucking kidding
Read
me?
the room.
Excuse me? What in the flaming fuck? Okay, excuse me. You can go fuck yourself. What the
100%. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, so I mean, I know why, right? Like he had manipulated her into this situation. She was vulnerable. She was um she was in a bad place, and she was victimized.
Yeah.
So what happened eventually he started trying to groom my 13-year-old cousin for abuse. Um but she was not afraid of him. She was not like me.
Mhm.
She told everybody what he did. And my mom, knowing that she wasn't the one being abused, that it was somebody she cared about, she was able to leave him finally. And he stalked us for years.
Oh my God.
Um, but we started this, almost 40-year trek of parading into DA's offices and begging them to do something, going to the police and begging them to do something, and nobody wanted to do anything. He was friends with the cops. They played basketball a couple times a week together. Whenever the cops would get called because of the violence at our house, he would just say, "I don't know, man. She's a crazy bitch. She attacked me." And they go, "Ha ha ha. I know how women are." And they leave. So just there was just, I'm gonna not look at that anymore because this person is like out of
I'm trying
control.
to figure out how the fuck to block this piece of shit. I can't even fucking read the comments. And I've seen him in here before, so I know he knows about my blindness, or he or she. So like seriously, go fuck yourself. You are not welcome here. You are fucking disgusting. Seriously, go seek help. You're repulsive.
Yeah, 100%.
I'm so sorry.
That's
Like,
okay. Don't feed the trolls. He's just looking for attention, and he
gross.
can fuck off. Uh, Good news is I'm no longer looking at those stupid comments anymore, so it doesn't matter what he says. Nobody's
Yeah,
gonna see it. Nobody
yeah,
cares. Um, but we started a 40-year journey of trying to get justice, and we've had the door slammed in our face multiple times. And it wasn't until I got the records in 2005 that I realized that he had confessed twice. Um, so in New Mexico, apparently, in Socorro, New Mexico, you could murder somebody. You could murder a baby. You could confess multiple times and you won't go to jail. So
'cause there was a statute of limitations at that point, right?
for second-degree murder, yes. So in New Mexico, second-degree murder did have a statute of limitations, and that was the only charge that they could bring against him, really, because he, like, in order to prove first-degree murder, you have to prove intent, and that
Right.
is a very, very difficult burden of proof.
Sure.
Um, so second-degree murder was probably the only thing that they could hope to get on him. But even with 2 confessions, they didn't even bother. They didn't even try. So, that's kind of like the Cliff's Notes version of Jacob's story, and that's probably as fast as I can tell it.
Yeah.
We're still fighting for justice. You know, the attorney general had the case for a few years. We had gotten it all the way to the attorney general, through media pressure and through call and email campaigns to the DA's office. They had it for 3 years. They talked to one person, said it was unsolvable, and closed the case.
Even though there's a confession, it's
Well,
unsolvable.
here's the rub. The rub is that there is mention of 2 confessions, but there is no transcript. There is no signed affidavit. There is no recorded tape, even though the person I talked to, the person who took one of the confessions, says, "I recorded it. I wrote it down. I had him sign it." He said, "I knew they were going to cover it up."
And why do you think that is? Do you think it's because he was friends with the cop?
Yeah,
Because it'll look like shit for them to finally come forward and be like, yeah, we screwed up almost 40
all of it.
years ago.
All of it. Yeah, I mean, I
Oh,
think first and foremost, he was friends. Billy Savager, the sheriff at the time, when the state police were looking for him to question him, drove him around in his trooper vehicle, in his sheriff vehicle, to hide him from the state police
oh my God.
for hours. For hours. So, yes, I think it's a small town, New Mexico. They're all friends. They all know each other. You know, it's the good old boys system, the good old boys club. It's the 80s. It's whatever, it's all of it.
Yeah.
And it sounds made up. And if it didn't happen to me, I probably would be like, This is outrageous." It is outrageous. And what's even
Mhm.
more outrageous is that a prosecutor named Greer, who is the most condescending person I've ever met in my entire life, had the nerve to sit across from me when I questioned her about the fact that they only talked to one person in 3 years and called that a thorough investigation. She had the nerve to look at me in the face and say, "We didn't see any evidentiary value in collecting additional statements." And I said, "I'm sorry, from the guy who confessed twice, you didn't see any evidentiary value in putting a little bit of pressure on him to see if he might confess and take a plea deal now to clear his conscience? You didn't think that that might be worth a little bit of effort? What are you even doing here?" She's like, "Well, but with all due respect, I've been doing my job for 15 years." And I said, "That doesn't mean you're any fucking good at it."
No, it doesn't. And usually, when you know how it's like, if a wife ends up unalived, it's the husband's the first person. If a kid is home with someone
Yep,
and they wind up unalived, the first person you talk to is the one who was there with them.
right.
I mean, I don't even understand. It's freaking insane. Is he still alive?
Yep. He's alive, he's free to hurt whoever he wants for the last 39 years.
Incredible. Have you done like a database search to see if he's been arrested for anything else?
He has no record right now,
Oh my God.
which is alarming.
Yes. People like that don't stop, especially when there's no consequences.
Yep.
Wow. Is he still in New Mexico?
Yes.
Oh my God. How
Yep.
is your mom?
We're she's she's okay. I mean, she's obviously heavily traumatized and obviously, it's not an easy thing to deal with every day. We got the life sentence, not him.
Yeah.
We have to live with this every day of our lives. We have to live with the absence of Jacob. My mom never gets to meet his kids. I never get to meet my nephews and nieces. We never even get to know like what his life would be like. All of that was stolen from us.
Yeah.
Christmas, birthdays, Thanksgiving, forever, forever. It's
Yeah.
not fair. And it drives me insane that the authorities don't seem to give a shit.
What
I
about your
reported,
dad? Has he, had anything to say? Did he like what was his, reaction?
my dad, when Jacob died, he promised me that he would take me to Disneyland when I turned 7. Um, he gave me a bike, and then I never saw him again until I was 18. Didn't talk to him, didn't hear
Oh,
from him until I was 18. Well, 15, I went and found him, and then I got pissed off. Um, and then he came for my graduation when I turned 18, but we really didn't have a good relationship. He, I think, went the route of just act like it didn't happen,
mm,
which a lot of my family did,
yeah.
and I don't blame people for having that reaction. I understand they're trying to protect themselves. But I didn't have that luxury. I can't turn it off. We
Yeah.
reported my abuse to the police. They took a report. They asked me about his genitals. Nothing happened. My cousin reported what he was saying to her. Nothing happened. Um, the justice system isn't just.
Yeah.
It's a legal system, and it doesn't work all the time.
Yeah.
Most of the time, I would say it doesn't work.
Yeah. You did something about a year or two ago that was called Justice for Jacob. And I wanted to ask, what would justice look like for Jacob? Would it simply be him going to prison for what he's done, or would that be enough? Is that justice?
No, I mean, justice is something that concept I struggle with, because even if he goes to jail, um, it doesn't change the fact that Jacob isn't here. It
Yeah.
doesn't change the fact that we have this huge hole in our hearts. That is still an injustice. So
Absolutely.
the only reason that I want him in jail is because I don't want him to hurt anybody else. And that has always been the reason why I continue to fight for this. Um, and I'm even at the point where if somebody else was abused by him, and we can still get him prosecuted for it, and they want
Oh,
help, like, I will help them, whatever it
yeah.
takes to make sure that he doesn't hurt anybody else. But the state of New Mexico has failed over and over and over and over and over again, and not just with Jacob's case, hundreds of child abuse cases across the state. Kids continue to be unalived by their parents here in New Mexico,
Yeah.
and not enough is being done. It is a dirty secret that we have that needs to not be a secret. People need to start waking up and realizing that this is a failure at every level. Child protective services, legislation, police response, prosecution, their autonomy to decide to try a case in their head. And if they feel like it's not winnable, they just toss it aside.
Yep.
Where's the justice in that?
Yep. Absolutely. You actually started a podcast a few years back, and you didn't start wanting to share Jacob's story necessarily, but you did want to be an advocate and give others a voice with their stories that weren't solved, and they were all in New Mexico. Then at
Yeah,
one point, you decided, I'm going to talk about Jacob and I'm going to have my mom on the show. And
yeah.
that episode is so powerful. What made you decide to take the podcast and say, you know what? I am gonna, start talking about Jacob as well.
Yeah, I started True Consequences because I saw cases like Jacob's going through the media, cases like Omari Varela, Victoria Martins, baby Brianna, Jeremiah Valencia, James Dunkley Cruz. I mean, just countless children who have suffered at the hands of abusers, and unfortunately did not survive. And I kept saying to myself as an adult, somebody needs to say something. Somebody needs to do something. This is absurd that this is still happening. Um, and I waited for somebody to stand up, and I don't think anybody really did. So then I said, well, fuck it. I'm gonna say something. I'm gonna do something. Like, I'm tired of waiting for somebody to save the day. Like, I'm gonna fucking do it. Like, enough already.
Yeah.
So I started True Consequences. And I was trying to help families of the missing and unalived be able to share their stories in their words without being edited for content, without being cut to a soundbite. Very, very minimal editing, only for clarity. And I was talking to a mom, and she said, I'd given her that same kind of speech of what you ignore, you permit. We were just having a conversation about laws in New Mexico and how lax everything is here. And um, when I said that to her, it really like hit me hard that I was being a hypocrite because I was asking people to tell their stories, but I was not willing to tell mine. I wasn't willing to face the reality of what was going on with Jacob's case. I just wanted to kind of, I was helping people, but I'm hyper self aware as a human. So I said, okay, well, I need to stop being a hypocrite and I need to call my mom and see if she'll talk to me about this. What you hear in that interview is the first time we ever talked about Jacob's case together from start to finish. So all of that emotion, all of that pain is real. Um, it, it was very, very difficult conversation. We had to stop several times. Um, but it also really helped, I think, both of us to heal a little bit. And in that conversation, we actually realized that we wanted to do more to help people. So we started dreaming up an organization that would help families of the missing and murdered called um, Angels Voices Silence No More. And that organization pays grants to families for things like funeral expenses, counseling, DNA testing, billboards, social media ads, flyers, search and rescue supplies, pretty much anything, private investigations, pretty much anything that they might need in their fight for justice or answers. And we founded that organization it's been about 4 years now. We're now talking about getting ready to launch it nationwide. Um, and so that has been an awesome way to take all of this negativity and all this darkness and channel it into something positive, channel it into um, peace and healing and love in my community for the people that are going through what my family's gone through. And as I look at that, I was like, well, I can do more than that. I can do more than the podcast. I can do more than Angels Voices. And so I started Advocacy Conference, which is for families of the missing and unalived. It's a community where we all come together and we learn from each other and we learn from experts and we connect with nonprofit organizations and we connect with other people who know what it's like to do this. And this year, actually in March, was the first year of the conference, and it was incredible. It was so powerful, and we heard things like, "I didn't know how much I needed this." That kind of stuff just really made me feel good because I
Mhm.
knew that we were on the right track, and I knew that we were doing right by families that are out there seeking answers. The true crime world is very exploitive
Yes.
and oftentimes very self-serving for the people that are at the top of the charts.
Mhm.
Um, and so I kind of have stopped making true crime content, not because I felt like I was being exploitive, but because I felt like I could do more directly supporting families. And that has been super fulfilling for me. And I think that I found my life's purpose through this.
I think you're so right. And I noticed that at the True Crime Podcast Festival, there were people who, at the end, when we were going around saying what we enjoyed most, there were people talking about their follower count, talking about how they were recognized by certain people. And I'm like, you heard stories of people who have lost loved ones in the most
Mhm.
egregious way. And this is what you're talking about. You're into true crime, not into advocacy. There's a
Right.
space for that. And there's a lot
Yeah.
of people who are there for the dirty, vile, entertainment of it. Um, but then there are of us who are advocates and activists and who do it more on a humanist level.
Yeah.
So you really saw the difference in who was there for look where I am, and then those who were like, I want to network with people who are affected as well with, I want to learn more about this. Like, I had a blast because I met so many beautiful people and I learned so much
Yeah.
about, people's personal stories and things like that. But I really did see who was there for their heart and who was there for their pockets.
Yeah. Yeah. And listen, true crime can be a tool that can be leveraged by families to get attention on their cases. Absolutely, 100%. But that comes with strings. It comes with attachments. It comes with,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of things that, you know, I wouldn't wish on my worst enemy, honestly.
Yeah.
One of my first interactions with the viciousness of some of the true crime armchair sleuths was somebody saying that I'm just trying to get rich off of my stupid dead brother. Um, I've sunk thousands of dollars into all of my projects. I've not made like any money whatsoever. In fact, I'm sure my husband would prefer that I didn't continue spending so much money on this, but it's where my heart is.
Yeah.
And I have to do it. I don't have a choice, I don't think.
I'm telling you, and I was thinking about that today. My book, um, for the I'm gonna do a shameless plug. My book,
Yep.
Why I Went to Boston. Our friend Temujin, the wrongful conviction of Temujin Kensu. Um, I was on a show talking about it, and I had someone in the comments say, "You're exploiting a man's pain for your own profit." And I didn't, I couldn't read the comments, so I
Yeah.
looked afterwards, and I was like hysterical, honestly, because
Yeah.
I was like, is this what people think of me? And I'm like, as a disabled broke person, I have put thousands of dollars into this book, and I get $2.64 for every book I sell.
Right.
I am not making money at all. So and this book was done and is done with his blessing. So for someone to be presumptuous and to make that accusation, it freaking hurt. And
Oh,
even
I
if
mean,
they're
it gutted me.
nobody, was
Yeah.
that
I said it gutted me for real. I mean,
it
like
does.
that's my brother. Like it's not about it's never been about money ever. It's always been
No.
about justice.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like these people are nobodies. We don't know them. They're nobody important, but it kind of makes you, is this what people think? Like, is this really how people are interpreting what I'm doing? And it does affect you less
Yeah.
and less as the days go on. But sometimes you just think, wow, you're real ballsy behind a computer, you know,
Exactly. It's the anonymity of the web that has made people
yes. And
feel
it's
like
like
they
we're the
have.
ones who have the balls. We're the ones being fucking transparent and vulnerable and like sharing personal things on video for
Yep.
anyone to see. So it's very sad, but I think, at the end of the day, like our supporters are tenfold what the haters are. And
100%.
and I mean, when we were at the podcast festival, it seemed like everyone I talked to was like, "Did you meet Eric? Did you meet Eric?" Like, you're very loved in that space, and that's why I was like, "Okay, I gotta talk to this guy." And you're just very warm and very kind, and you are in it for all the right reasons. I want you to give your websites and even where people can listen to old episodes of the podcast, all of the things.
Sure. So True Consequences, you can find it anywhere you get podcasts. There's, I think, close to 200 episodes there. So even though I'm not producing content for it, you can definitely binge it. Um, it doesn't mean that it's not going to ever come back. It's just right now I don't have capacity. So the rest of it, so Angels Voices Silenced No More. It's angelsvoicesnm.org. Um, and that's specifically New Mexico, but soon to be nationwide. And then AdvocacyCon National Conference, advocacycon.com. You can find us on all social media for all of those things I just mentioned. You just got to search for them. Would love to, interact with you online, social media, whatever way makes sense. But yeah, thank you for the opportunity. I really appreciate it, and thanks for having me on tonight.
Absolutely. So please give Eric a follow, check out his websites, all of those things. Listen to his podcast. It's incredible. And please, talk about the families, not just talk about the victims, but as you said in one of your interviews, you guys are serving the life sentence, not the perpetrator
Mhm.
and the one who should be rotting in a jail cell. And that's so
Exactly.
true. We need to think about the families so much more. So hopefully, if you take something away from this, that's what it is. And also that almost 40 years in, just like Temujin, almost 40 years in, there still may be no justice and we can't stop. So thank you so much, Eric. You're incredible. You're amazing. And thank you so much for joining me. And you are welcome back anytime.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. You guys smash the like button and subscribe and tune in next time. Much love.